Cop laughs at black woman faces unfair trial. Until she pulls out her NSA credentials. Lena Fox never expected her life to turn upside down on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. She was a high achiever with a powerful secret, driving back from a classified briefing at Fort Meade. Meanwhile, Officer Drake Thompson was on the prowl for his next easy ticket. What started as a routine traffic stop turned into something far darker: snide remarks, contemptuous laughter, and a wrongful arrest. The next thing Lena knew, she was facing an unfair trial in a courtroom seemingly rigged against her. Little did they know, she possessed government credentials that would blow their assumptions to pieces and send shockwaves through the entire system. Lena Fox had always been cautious. Whether it was her upbringing in Baltimore or the stringent protocols of her job, she understood that details mattered, especially for someone who had to keep a large part of her life classified. On that particular Wednesday, the sun was perched high in a cloudless sky. The weather was mild for Maryland standards, a gentle breeze replacing the usual sticky humidity. Lena had her car windows partially rolled down, letting in fresh air as she navigated the suburban roads that led away from Fort Meade. She had just attended a critical briefing at the National Security Agency's headquarters. As an intelligence analyst with a specialization in advanced cryptology, Lena's official job description would have read cybersecurity specialist, the sort of nondescript title that garnered minimal suspicion. In reality, her responsibilities involved analyzing top-secret data from foreign adversaries, thwarting massive cyber threats, and, on rare occasions, going into the field on clandestine missions. All of it required impeccable discipline and a high-level security clearance. Yet none of that prepared her for what happened next. Lena slowed her car as she approached a stop sign. At that moment, she noticed a police cruiser pull in behind her from a side street. She thought nothing of it initially. She was not speeding, had all her documents in order, and had done nothing that could possibly warrant a stop. But the red and blue lights flared up behind her anyway. Her heart sank, a quick wave of anxiety washing over her. She had heard the stories about routine stops that turned into nightmares, especially for Black Americans. Still, Lena reminded herself that she had every right to drive these roads. She composed her nerves and pulled over. Maybe it was a broken taillight or something minor. She'd explain, cooperate, and be on her way. Within moments, the officer swaggered over. Lena reached for her license and registration. She had them ready by the time he arrived at her rolled-down window. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp uniform with the name Thompson on his badge. His expression, however, was anything but friendly. "License and registration," he snapped, not even greeting her. Lena handed them over. "I wasn't aware I broke any traffic laws, officer." He eyed her skeptically, flipping through her documents. "You swerved back there. Also, your left brake light looks dim." Lena blinked. She was certain she hadn't swerved. She was a meticulous driver, and her car had just passed inspection 2 weeks prior with no mention of a faulty brake light. She sensed something off, a certain hostility in the air. "May I ask, was I actually crossing any lines or speeding?" Lena tried to keep her tone calm and respectful. Officer Thompson offered a half-smile that felt more like a sneer. "Watch that attitude. I'll decide if you're crossing lines, not you." She closed her mouth. It was safer not to push. She'd been trained in de-escalation and knew better than to argue right now. The tension thickened as the officer peered at her license for a long moment, then back at her. "Step out of the car," he ordered. "I want to check if you're under the influence." "Under the influence?" Lena repeated in disbelief. She hadn't had a drop to drink in months. She wasn't even on medication that might impair her. She was about to protest, but thought better of it. Climbing out of the car, Lena placed her hands at her sides. She was conscious of every movement, aware of how quickly a misunderstanding could escalate. She stood quietly as Officer Thompson led her through basic sobriety tests. Walking in a straight line, following a pen with her eyes, standing on one foot. She performed them flawlessly. Thompson scowled as if disappointed. "Open the trunk," he said. Lena hesitated. She knew her Fourth Amendment rights. The officer had no probable cause. Yet she also didn't want to fan any flames. She decided to comply, hoping it would expedite her release. He rummaged through her trunk, fishing out the travel bag she carried for overnight trips. Finding nothing of note, he shoved it back. Next, he demanded to search the interior of her car. By that point, Lena's patience was wearing thin, but she reined in her irritation. While Thompson leaned into the passenger seat, Lena took a moment to breathe. She remembered the briefing at Fort Meade earlier that day, how she was analyzing advanced encryption methods used by foreign hackers. Now, ironically, she found herself powerless on a random roadside, subjected to a humiliating search by a cop who seemed determined to find something incriminating. Finally, Thompson exited the car with a huff. "Your insurance is expired," he said, waving her papers. That startled her. She had recently renewed her policy. "I'm certain it's valid." "You calling me a liar?" Thompson barked. "Turn around and place your hands on the hood." That was the moment Lena recognized something had gone seriously wrong. She knew for a fact her insurance was up to date. But before she could protest, Thompson grabbed her wrist and pushed her forward. She felt the hard metal of the car's hood against her torso. "You're under arrest," he declared, "for driving without proper insurance and obstructing a police investigation." "What?" Lena gasped, anger flooding her. "I wasn't obstructing." Thompson cut her off. "Be quiet or I'll add resisting arrest." Her heart thumped wildly as he clicked the cuffs around her wrists. She swallowed the urge to reveal her NSA credentials right there, hearing the echoes of her training. Only reveal your affiliation in dire circumstances. But Lena was not just an average citizen. She was far from powerless. Instead, she weighed her options. The humiliation burned, being treated like a criminal on the side of the road when she had done nothing. Thompson let out a low, condescending laugh as he escorted her to the back of his cruiser. "Bet you thought you could do what you want," he muttered. "Not today." Lena had never experienced such blatant disrespect in her life. Even as she was unceremoniously pushed into the patrol car, she vowed internally that he would regret it, not with violence or revenge, but with the truth, because Lena had the law, and something else infinitely more potent on her side. Officer Thompson drove Lena to the local precinct. She sat in the back seat, hands cuffed, staring at the tinted windows. The surreal weight of the situation pressed on her chest. She had been on her way home from a top-secret briefing, and now she was under arrest on false charges. She found her thoughts drifting between outrage and a forced calm, recalling the lessons drilled into her at the NSA. Never compromise the mission unless it becomes absolutely necessary. Is this absolutely necessary yet? Lena wondered. Upon arrival, Thompson practically yanked her out of the car. She winced as the handcuffs pressed against her wrists. Her mind raced. She could reveal her NSA badge right now, maybe call her superior for immediate intervention. But that might blow a covert part of her identity wide open, potentially complicating her future operations. She steeled herself. She needed to play this smart. She hadn't done anything illegal, which meant she should be out on bail soon, if the system worked as intended. Then again, Lena also knew how flawed the system could be, especially for someone like her. She was far too aware that justice wasn't always just, and truth could be conveniently overlooked by those in power. In the cramped booking area, Thompson handed off Lena's documents to another officer, a man named Rodriguez, who seemed uneasy. "You want me to process her for no insurance, maybe a traffic violation?" Thompson crossed his arms. Also, resisting arrest and obstructing. Rodriguez's eyes flickered over Lena, who kept her gaze steady. "All right," he said, though he looked unconvinced. "Let's get her prints, mug shots." Lena stood before the camera, the flash capturing her in a humiliating moment she never thought she'd face. Once processed, she was led to a holding cell. The cell was dingy, with a metal bench along one wall. A single overhead light flickered, bathing the space in a cold, fluorescent glow. She settled onto the bench, the adrenaline ebbing away to leave behind a rattling exhaustion. Minutes felt like hours. The muffled sounds of the precinct drifted in, Phones ringing, officers shouting across the hall, the occasional clang of barred doors. She tried to quell the panic that threatened to consume her. Keep calm, think strategically. Lena knew she'd be given a chance to make a phone call. She intended to call a lawyer friend who was also one of her oldest confidants. She'd figure out the next steps from there. But first, Lena needed to know what Officer Thompson had put in the official report. She had an uncanny feeling that it might not be an honest account of the incident. It took another hour before a tall, middle-aged man in a rumpled suit appeared outside her cell. His ID badge identified him as Detective Jim Mathis. "Miss Fox," he said wearily, "let's talk." Lena rose, stepping cautiously to the cell door. Finally. The detective opened the cell with a grunt and led her to a small interrogation room. No windows, just a table and 2 chairs. He motioned for her to sit. She complied, and he took the seat across from her. He rifled through a file, presumably Thompson's report. "Officer Thompson states he pulled you over for swerving in a broken brake light, that you refused to provide valid insurance, and you became belligerent, which led to your arrest." Mathis looked up. "He claims you were under the influence, though you passed a sobriety test. Then you obstructed his search. Now I'm trying to see if there's enough to hold you or if we set bail." Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I cooperated fully. He claimed my insurance is invalid, which is incorrect. I have full coverage." Mathis tented his hands. "Do you have proof?" Lena nodded. "Yes, in my glove compartment. He never gave me a chance to show it. I also have my insurance app on my phone, but I assume you have my phone in evidence." Mathis nodded. "We do." "Check it," Lena insisted. "There's a digital copy of my insurance card, valid through next year." Mathis tapped his pen on the table. "We'll look into that. The question is, why would Officer Thompson make this all up if it's not true?" Lena let out a slow breath. She didn't want to play the race card lightly, but she'd seen enough. "He never explained himself. He demanded to search my car for no reason, pinned me against the hood and handcuffed me. He also threatened to add charges if I spoke." Mathis studied her for a moment, his eyes searching. "All right, Miss Fox. I'm going to verify your insurance. If it checks out, I don't see a reason to hold you on that. The rest, resisting arrest or obstructing, are misdemeanors we can sort out quickly if your story matches other evidence." Lena relaxed marginally. This man seemed more reasonable than Thompson. Perhaps once the dust settled, this fiasco would end in an apology. But how naive is that, she thought. Detective Mathis then stood. "You can make a phone call now if you'd like." "Thank you," Lena replied. She was escorted to a phone at a station in the hallway. She dialed her friend and attorney, Harriet Cross, whose number she knew by heart. Harriet answered on the 3rd ring, her voice calm and professional. "Hello?" "Harriet, it's Lena. I'm at the police precinct in Glen Burnie. I've been arrested. Falsely, I might add. I need your legal help." There was a pause on the other line. Then Harriet said calmly, "I'm on my way. Say nothing until I get there." Lena hung up, feeling some relief. Harriet was an exceptional defense attorney who specialized in cases involving police misconduct and civil rights. If anyone could expose Thompson's misconduct, it was Harriet. While waiting, Lena was placed back into the holding cell. Another hour crawled by. Finally, Harriet arrived, a petite woman with an unshakable confidence that belied her stature. She wore her hair in a neat bun and brandished a slim, elegant briefcase that she set down with calculated grace. The moment Lena saw her friend's face through the bars, the tension in her shoulders began to unknot. Harriet flashed a reassuring smile. "How are you holding up, Eb?" Harriet asked softly. Lena gave a short laugh. "I'll live, but I can't believe this is happening." Harriet sighed. "Let's get you out of here first, then we'll worry about the rest." She turned to Detective Mathis, who had come to greet her. "I want to speak to my client privately." Mathis unlocked the cell and stepped aside. Harriet pulled Lena into a corner of the hallway for a confidential conversation. "Listen," Harriet began in a low voice. "I've already looked at the probable cause affidavit. It's shaky at best. The insurance claim is outright false. The officer is basically accusing you of resisting because you asked questions. I've seen these tactics before. Lena's jaw tightened. So I might get stuck with these charges for months. Harriet shook her head firmly. We'll fight them. You're going to be arraigned in front of a judge tomorrow morning. I'll push to have the charges dismissed, or at least get bail set low so you can walk out. Lena nodded, feeling a tinge of hope. Harriet's confidence was infectious. Yet Lena knew that even if she got out, the ordeal wasn't over. Officer Thompson's arrogance might be the tip of a deeper issue in the department, or it might be isolated. Either way, Lena resolved she wouldn't let this go quietly. Soon enough, Lena was allowed to post bail, thanks to Harriet's swift negotiation. She walked out of the precinct, the harsh fluorescent lights replaced by the soft glow of the early evening sky. She inhaled, the fresh air a welcome change after the stifling cell. Outside, Harriet faced her. We need to discuss next steps, Lena. I have to gather evidence, dash cam footage, body cam footage, whatever we can get. If the department is upright, they'll produce everything. If not, we might have to subpoena it. Lena felt the corners of her mouth curl into a determined line. I also have some resources that might help shed light on the situation. Harriet gave her a quizzical look. Lena had always been vague about her actual job. What exactly do you mean? Lena hesitated, then gave a small shrug. Let's just say I have a background check on this officer that might be more thorough than the department's, she said, not wanting to fully reveal her NSA affiliation yet. I'll get it to you soon. Harriet studied her friend for a moment, then nodded. All right, Lena, but whatever you do, tread carefully. We don't want them accusing us of hacking or tampering with evidence. Lena agreed. Of course. I'll make sure everything's done by the book. Harriet walked with her to the parking lot, where Lena called a ride-share to get home. Her car was still impounded at the station. As they waited, Lena scanned the street and realized she was stepping into a precarious battle. This was more than just a random bad cop. If Thompson was willing to falsify a police report, Lena wondered how far he might go to cover it up when he realized she wasn't just an ordinary woman. For now, Lena wanted to keep her NSA credentials a secret, but a gnawing feeling told her that the day might come when she'd have to use them, both as a shield and as a sword. Back in her small but immaculate apartment in Baltimore, Lena sank into the plush sofa, phone pressed to her ear. She was speaking with a close colleague at Fort Meade, known only as Casey. One of the rules of her clandestine life was never to use last names or official designations over unsecured lines. I need some background info on a local police officer, Lena murmured, glancing at her living room window to ensure it was closed. Name's Drake Thompson, Glen Burnie Precinct. Are you sure? Casey asked, sounding concerned. We're not exactly a private detective agency, Lena. She sighed. I was arrested by him. Wrongfully. I need to know if there's a pattern or if he's connected to something bigger. I suspect there's more to it. A long pause. I can do a surface-level check, see if there's any outstanding data from public records or known flagged interactions, but that's it. Anything deeper, we'd need official clearance. Lena clenched her jaw. She knew the laws. The NSA was not supposed to spy domestically on U.S. citizens without cause. Even referencing open source or cross-agency data would be frowned upon if it wasn't strictly for national security. But Lena felt that her personal safety and the pursuit of justice might justify some lines of inquiry. Still, she appreciated Casey's caution. All right, do that for me. Even a partial picture might help my lawyer build a case. Keep it minimal. Got it. I'll get back to you soon, Casey responded, then hung up. Lena set her phone aside and exhaled deeply. She realized she hadn't eaten since morning, and the stress of the day was gnawing at her. She forced herself to rummage the fridge for leftovers. She warmed up some lasagna, though she barely tasted the cheesy pasta as she swallowed each bite, her mind racing with what lay ahead. The night stretched long, with Lena reviewing every detail of the arrest. She scribbled notes in a spiral notebook, recalling every word, every threat from Officer Thompson. She had no illusions about the uphill battle. The justice system often gave the benefit of the doubt to law enforcement, and Thompson's word might hold considerable weight. She would need every shred of evidence on her side to dismantle his false claims. Lena arrived at the courthouse for her arraignment. It was a short proceeding that determined she would stand trial for the misdemeanor charges. Harriet managed to reduce the severity of the allegations, but the district attorney, Mark Brenner, looked all too eager to proceed. Lena suspected Thompson had already spoken to him. She also couldn't shake the feeling that Brenner had a personal or political motive in pushing the case forward. Outside the courtroom, Harriet pulled Lena aside. "They're doubling down, Lena. I'm requesting all body cam and dash cam footage. If that shows you did nothing wrong, we can get the charges dropped. But we're at the mercy of the department to turn it over." Lena frowned. What if they claim the footage is lost or corrupted? Harriet's eyes darkened. That wouldn't be the first time. But that's where you might come in with your resources. If you have any way to confirm whether the footage truly exists, let me know. We'll proceed carefully. For now, the next court date is in 3 weeks. We'll use that time to gather evidence. Just as they turned to leave, Lena spotted Officer Thompson in the hallway, leaning against a wall. He made eye contact and flashed a smug grin that made her stomach churn. She refused to look away, returning his gaze with quiet determination. "Yeah, keep walking," Thompson muttered as they passed. It was low enough that Harriet might not have heard, but Lena did. She felt anger bubble up, but Harriet placed a hand on her arm and guided her away. Lena was back home, waiting anxiously for Casey's call. Around 5 p.m., her phone buzzed. She answered. "I did a surface-level check," Casey began in a serious tone. "Nothing major on Thompson's record from a federal standpoint. No big flags or government watch list items. However, I dug into local news archives. There's a mention of a civil complaint filed by 3 individuals a couple of years back, accusing an Officer Thompson of harassment and excessive force." Lena's heart quickened. Where did it go? It was settled out of court. The department concluded there was insufficient evidence for internal disciplinary action. The settlement details are sealed, but the names match Thompson's. Also, he's been involved in 6 use-of-force incidents in the past 4 years, all deemed justified by the local PD. Lena bit her lip. Interesting. So there's a pattern of allegations. Exactly. Nothing conclusive, but it shows a trend. Might be valuable to your lawyer. Lena jotted down the details. "Thank you, Casey. I owe you one." "Be careful, Lena. Don't let this overshadow your other responsibilities. Some lines once crossed are hard to uncross." She heard the concern in Casey's voice and gave a solemn acknowledgement. "I will." Then she ended the call. Now armed with a small thread to pull on, Lena forwarded the basic details to Harriet's secure email. Within minutes, Harriet confirmed receipt. She proposed meeting the next day to discuss further. Lena agreed. As she put down her phone, Lena realized how dangerously close she was getting to exposing the nature of her real work. If her NSA identity came out in open court, it wouldn't just reflect on her. It could drag the agency into a scandal. Yet Lena believed in accountability. If an officer was systematically abusing his power, that had to be addressed. Lena decided to take a walk to clear her head. Dusk was settling over Baltimore, the sky streaked with orange and purple. She moved through her neighborhood, passing row homes, corner stores, and the local playground she used to frequent as a child. Memories flooded her. Memories of simpler times, when her biggest worry was whether she'd make the basketball team. She paused at the edge of the playground, resting her hands on the chain-link fence. "I've come a long way from here," she thought. "I'm not about to let one crooked cop derail everything." The thought steeled her resolve. She was Lena Fox, a woman who had navigated the complexities of federal intelligence work. She was not going to be bullied by a man who wore his authority on his sleeve and used it to terrorize. A flutter of nerves reminded her. She was also very much at risk. Thompson might not be working alone. He might have friends in the department who would do anything to protect him. If they realized she had a powerful position, they might come after her reputation or even her safety. But Lena couldn't hide forever. The time to step forward would come soon. and when it did, she vowed it would be on her terms. Over the next few weeks, Lena and Harriet worked tirelessly, gathering evidence to dismantle Officer Thompson's account. Harriet filed motions requesting all relevant footage from the day of the arrest: dashcam, body cam, and any security footage from nearby businesses or traffic cameras. They also requested Thompson's disciplinary record, citing potential patterns of misconduct. Predictably, the police department dragged its feet. Some footage was suddenly unavailable due to technical issues. Other pieces were still being located. Harriet remained undeterred, escalating the matter to a judge who threatened sanctions if the evidence wasn't produced. On top of that, Lena was dealing with the labyrinth of NSA protocols. Although she had not yet disclosed her affiliation to Harriet in explicit terms, Lena privately consulted her chain of command, letting them know she was involved in a legal matter unrelated to her official duties. The agency wasn't thrilled. Any public drama involving an NSA employee could draw unwanted attention. Yet Lena reminded her superiors that she'd keep the agency's name out of it unless absolutely necessary. The tension culminated when Lena discovered that her personal email had been hacked. Late one evening, she tried to log in, only to find her password had been changed. Anxious, she used her cybersecurity skills to recover her account. The IP logs pointed to a suspicious source in Glen Burnie. She couldn't prove it was Thompson, but the timing was far too coincidental. She immediately phoned Harriet, voice shaky. "Someone broke into my email." Harriet's tone was alarmed. What did they see? Mostly personal stuff, but if they dig deeper, they might find a hint about my real job. I'm worried they'll spin it against me. Change all your passwords, Lena. Secure everything. Do you have a VPN or some advanced protection you can use? Lena nearly laughed. She had access to top-tier cyber defenses, but using them in her personal capacity to guard against domestic threats was tricky. Still, she assured Harriet she'd take the necessary measures. The following day, Harriet discovered that an anonymous tip had been sent to the district attorney's office, accusing Lena of having ties to foreign operatives. Outrage boiled in Lena when she heard the news. It was an absurd lie, obviously planted to cast doubt on her character. Harriet managed to convince the DA that the claim was baseless, but the damage was done. There was now a cloud of suspicion swirling around Lena. In a private conversation, Harriet finally confronted her. "Lena, you're not a spy, are you? I don't mean to pry, but these rumors—" Lena's eyes darted away. "I'm not a spy," she answered carefully. "But I do work in a field that deals with national security. My job is highly classified. I can't talk about it openly, Harriet." Harriet's eyes widened. "So they're trying to use that against you, to paint you as some sort of threat?" Lena nodded, her jaw tight. "Exactly. I think Thompson got word that I might be more than I appear. He's pulling every trick to ruin my credibility." Harriet let out a heavy sigh. "All right, Lena. That means we need an airtight defense, no slip-ups. If he tries to smear you with vague accusations, we'll demand evidence. In the meantime, is there any official ID that might help us if push comes to shove? Something that shows you work with the government, legitimately?" Lena felt her stomach twist. Her NSA credentials were top secret. She could reveal them to the court in a private session, but that would likely lead to an avalanche of complications. She resolved then and there that she'd only brandish those credentials if the trial went sideways, if it was the only way to protect herself and her record. Harriet had finally received the dashcam footage. She called Lena to her office to view it. The office was a warm, inviting space adorned with law books, personal accolades, and a single large plant in the corner. Harriet sat behind her desk, Lena by her side. They clicked on the file. The video showed Thompson's cruiser pulling behind Lena's vehicle. Lena stopped at the sign correctly, no swerving visible. The brake lights seemed to be in perfect working order. Harriet paused the footage and looked at Lena. "So much for his claims," she murmured. They continued watching. Thompson walked to Lena's window, demanded her license. The footage had audio too, capturing Lena's polite, cooperative tone, and Thompson's abrupt hostility. At one point, Lena was heard explaining her insurance policy, offering to show it on her phone. Thompson appeared to brush her off, telling her to shut up. Then came the part that made Lena shudder. Thompson forced her to the hood of her car, cuffed her, and said, "I'll make something stick." Harriet paused the video there, a triumphant glint in her eyes. "This is it," Harriet whispered. "He flat out incriminates himself. There's no question. He says he'll make something stick. That's a confession of fabricating charges." Lena's eyes flickered with relief. "We have him." The next few minutes on the footage captured Lena's arrest and Thompson's patronizing laughter. Then the camera cut off abruptly, possibly turned off or removed. Harriet replayed the crucial moment several times, ensuring she had the timestamps correct. "Officer Thompson is done," Harriet said, leaning back in her chair. "Once I show this in court, the DA might be forced to drop charges against you and open an investigation on him." Lena nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Yet a small voice in the back of her mind warned her that Thompson wouldn't go down without a fight. She suspected he had allies, but with this footage, Lena was confident they had the truth on their side. Lena sat alone in her apartment, mentally preparing. If everything went according to plan, Harriet would present the dashcam evidence, the case would collapse, and Lena could walk away with her record clear. Possibly, an internal investigation into Thompson would follow. That would be the best outcome. Yet Lena couldn't sleep, an uneasy feeling gnawing at her. She checked her phone for any updates. Harriet had sent a reassuring text. "We've got this." Lena tried to let the words console her. She ended up pacing her living room until midnight, phone in hand, expecting something. An unwanted knock at the door, a menacing call, anything. But nothing came. Finally, she forced herself to bed, praying that tomorrow's events would bring an end to this nightmare. Unbeknownst to her, Drake Thompson was at his own home, sipping from a whiskey glass, studying the same footage Harriet had. He was on the phone with an unknown figure, cursing under his breath. The seeds of desperation were sprouting, and Lena's intuition about a final confrontation was about to be confirmed. Morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Baltimore County Courthouse. The corridors bustled with lawyers and defendants, clerks balancing stacks of paperwork, and the echo of footsteps bouncing off marble floors. Lena felt a swirl of emotions as she walked side by side with Harriet to courtroom 2. Inside, the gallery was sparsely filled, mostly other people waiting for their hearings, a couple of journalists who recognized Lena's case as a potential story, and a few uniformed officers. Among them, Lena spotted Thompson, standing at the front with the DA, Mark Brenner. The sight of Thompson's smirk made her stomach churn, but she kept her posture straight. Judge Harriet Wynne presided, an older woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. She called the court to session, and Lena felt the hush that settled over the room. Brenner started, confidently reciting the charges: driving without insurance, resisting arrest, and obstruction. He read from Thompson's report, emphasizing Lena's supposed belligerence. Harriet let him finish, her expression neutral. Then it was her turn. Harriet stood, her voice clear and unwavering. "Your Honor, we have evidence that completely contradicts Officer Thompson's account. Not only does my client have valid insurance, but the dashcam footage shows a lawful stop and compliance on her part. It also reveals disturbing misconduct by Officer Thompson." A muscle in Brenner's jaw twitched. "We question the authenticity of this footage, Your Honor. We believe it might have been altered. Further, we have reason to suspect Miss Fox might be involved in certain nefarious activities." Lena's brow furrowed. Nefarious activities? She cast a quick glance at Harriet. This was the smear attempt they'd expected. Judge Wynne leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. "Let's see the footage before we make any assumptions. Miss Cross, you may proceed." Harriet nodded to the bailiff, who set up a screen. The dashcam video rolled. The entire room watched as Lena's calm demeanor and Thompson's hostility played out in stark contrast. The key moment came when Thompson said, "I'll make something stick." Some in the gallery gasped. Thompson stood rigid, his face blanching. Judge Wynne paused the video, turning her gaze to Thompson and then to Brenner. "Well, Mr. Brenner, how do you respond to your officer's statement?" Brenner cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we're not certain of the authenticity. Officer Thompson claims his dashcam malfunctioned that day. This video might have been doctored." Judge Wynn eyed Harriet. "Can you vouch for the authenticity of this footage?" Harriet nodded. "We have chain of custody documentation from the police department's own records. They reluctantly provided it after we filed a motion to compel. It's all in the official server logs." Thompson's face went from pale to flushed. He clenched his fists at his sides but said nothing. Judge Wynn took a deep breath. "This is quite disturbing. Mr. Brenner, if the footage is authentic, your case against Miss Fox is built on what appears to be falsified police statements." Brenner tried to recover. "Your Honor, even if the arrest was questionable, Miss Fox's background remains in question. We've received an anonymous tip that she's involved with foreign governments. We believe she's a security risk." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Harriet turned to Lena, her eyes silently asking, "Is this where we do it?" Lena nodded slightly. She rose, ignoring the dryness in her throat. "Your Honor, I would like permission to speak on my own behalf." Judge Wynn gestured for her to approach. "Proceed." Lena stepped forward, heart pounding. She felt every gaze in the courtroom latch onto her, waiting to see what she would say. With measured calm, she spoke, her voice echoing in the stillness of the room. "These allegations are baseless. I have spent years serving this country in ways I'm not at liberty to fully disclose, but to clear my name, I must reveal a portion of my true occupation." She reached into her bag, pulling out a sleek black leather case. She carefully opened it and extracted her NSA identification card, a high-security credential that displayed her photo, her full name, and a bold watermark that read, "National Security Agency." Gasps reverberated through the courtroom. Thompson's eyes widened, while Brenner's mouth hung open, seemingly at a loss for words. Lena handed the credential to the bailiff, who then passed it to Judge Wynn. The judge studied it carefully, her expression shifting from curiosity to respect. She looked up at Lena. "This is quite significant. Miss Fox, you're employed by the NSA." "Yes, Your Honor," Lena said, voice steady. "I'm a senior analyst with a top-secret security clearance, sworn to protect this nation. I'm prohibited from discussing details of my work, but I can assure you that any insinuation of foreign collusion is not only false, it's preposterous. Officer Thompson's claims are a desperate attempt to discredit me." Brenner tried to regain some footing. "Your Honor, we had no prior knowledge of this. If Miss Fox holds such a position, why wasn't it disclosed earlier?" Harriet stepped forward. "Because it's classified. Miss Fox only revealed it now to refute the baseless accusations put forth by the prosecution. We also provided enough evidence to prove her innocence without resorting to this revelation. But we were forced to escalate when Mr. Brenner invoked national security insinuations." Judge Wynn leaned back in her chair, her gaze settling on Thompson. "Officer Thompson, please approach the bench." Thompson did so, his face a mask of dread. "Yes, Your Honor? Do you have any defense for your comments on the dashcam footage or for your claims against Miss Fox's insurance?" Thompson's jaw worked silently for a moment. Then he stammered, "I must have misunderstood her. I thought she was resisting. The insurance, maybe it was a glitch in the system. As for the dashcam remark, that was taken out of context." Judge Wynn's eyes narrowed. "It seems very much in context to me. Officer, your integrity is in serious question." She turned to the DA. "Mr. Brenner, I strongly urge you to reconsider these charges. The video evidence is compelling, and Miss Fox's security credentials place her integrity beyond typical reproach. Unless you have something else to offer." Brenner's cheeks reddened. He shuffled papers, glancing at Thompson, who offered no help. "We will drop the charges, Your Honor," he said, his tone grudging. Harriet exhaled in relief, a small smile forming. Lena closed her eyes briefly, letting the moment wash over her. She was free. "Before we adjourn," Judge Wynn continued, I'm issuing a formal recommendation that Internal Affairs investigate Officer Thompson for potential misconduct. Miss Fox, I apologize on behalf of this court for the ordeal you've endured. Lena bowed her head. Thank you, Your Honor. The gavel struck, ending the proceedings. People in the gallery whispered in awe of the unexpected turn of events. Harriet gave Lena a congratulatory hug, and Lena felt tears of relief prick her eyes. As Lena gathered her things, Thompson shouldered his way past, muttering curses under his breath. In the hallway, Lena saw him slump against a wall, phone in hand, likely calling for backup of some kind. But Harriet placed a hand on Lena's shoulder. Ignore him. His time is coming. The aftermath of the trial was swift and brutal for Thompson. With Lena's charges dropped and the dashcam footage widely circulated among legal circles, and eventually the press, he became a liability to the Glen Burnie precinct. Internal Affairs launched an aggressive inquiry into his conduct, digging up all his prior complaints, especially the settled lawsuits that Lena's friend Casey had unearthed. It didn't take long for the department to suspend Thompson. Public outcry grew once the local news broadcast excerpts of the dashcam video. The segment included Lena's calm compliance juxtaposed with Thompson's arrogant threats. "I'll make something stick," replayed on loop, fueling a wave of indignation from citizens tired of police overreach. Thompson tried to mount a defense. He claimed Lena was some kind of government spook who manipulated the footage, that the settlement in his past cases was a standard practice, not an admission of guilt. But the more he fought, the deeper he sank. The local police union initially backed him, but as the evidence mounted, their support waned. Public sentiment had turned against him, and the union leadership ultimately distanced themselves to preserve their own credibility. Meanwhile, Lena returned to her duties at the NSA, quietly picking up the threads of her cryptology work. Her colleagues expressed relief and admiration. Some joked that she had single-handedly exposed local corruption without even trying. Lena didn't find much humor in it. She was just relieved to move forward. Yet she couldn't fully relax, not while Thompson still roamed free. Her concerns weren't unfounded. One evening, about a week after the trial, Lena was leaving a grocery store, arms laden with bags, when she sensed someone watching her. She turned and saw Thompson leaning against his car, arms crossed. Lena's stomach lurched, but she refused to show fear. She kept walking, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. "Hey, Fox," Thompson called out, voice dripping with venom. "You think you've won, huh?" She stopped in her tracks, turned halfway toward him. "You need something, Officer Thompson?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Not an officer anymore, thanks to you. I hope you're proud." Lena squared her shoulders. "I'm not proud or happy about any of this, but you did this to yourself." He looked like he wanted to retort, but something broke in his expression. Rage, fear, desperation all swirling behind his eyes. "I had everything. A career, respect, and now it's gone. How does it feel to ruin a man's life?" Lena's mind flicked back to that humiliating moment he pinned her against her car. She remembered his mocking laughter, his false accusations. She inhaled, steadied her nerves. "I didn't ruin your life, Thompson. You did, the moment you decided to misuse your badge." His nostrils flared. For a second, Lena worried he might lash out physically, but he just spat on the ground and got in his car, peeling away with a screech of tires. Lena's hands trembled as she adjusted her grocery bags. She didn't want to live in fear, but she'd be lying if she said she wasn't scared. That night, Lena filed a police report about being harassed by Thompson. She also notified Harriet. Harriet advised Lena to stay vigilant. A man like him, with everything to lose, is dangerous. Despite the tension, Lena pressed on. Over the coming weeks, Thompson's situation deteriorated further. Internal Affairs discovered discrepancies in his old arrest reports, fabricated details, suspicious missing body cam footage. One of his past victims came forward, emboldened by Lena's case, and shared a harrowing account of racial profiling and physical intimidation. Soon, a local civil rights group demanded a federal review of the Glen Burnie precinct's policing practices. Through it all, Lena maintained a low profile. She found solace in her work, deciphering complex codes and thwarting digital threats. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was trained to expose criminals and terrorists across the globe, yet she'd nearly been destroyed by a threat in her own backyard. Finally, about 2 months after the trial, Lena received a call from Harriet. "They're filing criminal charges against Thompson, perjury and misconduct," Harriet said, voice practically shaking with excitement. "This is huge. It rarely happens that quickly. He could face jail time if found guilty." Lena let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Good. Maybe justice does work sometimes. Harriet cleared her throat, turning more somber. "Now, Lena, there's a chance they'll want you to testify. You up for that?" Lena paused. Testifying might mean revealing more about her identity and methods in open court. But if that's what it took to finally see justice done, she'd do it. "I'll do what I have to," she said. A few weeks later, Lena found herself back at the courthouse, though this time as a witness, not a defendant. The courtroom was more crowded. Media interest had grown. Thompson appeared at the defense table looking gaunt and sullen. She was called to the stand to recount the day of her arrest, detailing every moment from the traffic stop to the words captured on the dashcam footage. When Thompson's defense attorney tried to attack Lena's credibility, implying she manipulated the footage with her government hacking skills, Lena calmly reminded him that the footage came from official police servers. Moreover, the forensic experts verified no tampering. The final blow came from the new dashcam footage discovered in an archived police server, footage from Thompson's prior altercations that showed a pattern of excessive force and bullying tactics. The jury, seeing the pattern, seemed visibly disturbed. In the end, Thompson was found guilty of perjury and official misconduct. His sentencing hearing followed a month later. Lena didn't attend. She felt she'd done her part. Harriet later informed her that Thompson received a 3-year prison sentence. Whether that would teach him anything, Lena didn't know. But it was a start. Outside the courthouse after the verdict, local reporters clamored for a statement. Lena, shielded by Harriet, simply said, "I'm grateful the truth came to light. I hope this serves as a reminder that no one is above the law." Then she hurried away, not wanting the spotlight any longer. Driving home that evening, Lena reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd glimpsed the dark side of the justice system, how easily it could snare an innocent person, especially when race and prejudice played a role. But she'd also witnessed the power of evidence, resilience, and the importance of allies like Harriet. There was a satisfying symmetry to it. A policeman who laughed at a black woman, believing she was powerless, only to discover that beneath her unassuming exterior lay credentials that symbolized the highest level of trust in national security. The cop's downfall wasn't Lena's triumph alone, it was the triumph of truth. And as Lena turned onto the familiar street leading to her apartment, the skyline of Baltimore shining in the distance, she allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. In the end, justice and a bit of karma had prevailed. Thank you for witnessing Lena Fox's courageous stand against injustice, where one crooked cop's malicious intent met its end under the weight of truth. From a humiliating roadside encounter to the dramatic reveal of her NSA credentials in a packed courtroom, Lena's story reminds us that every individual's voice matters, and evidence can dismantle even the most well-crafted lies. This triumphant moment serves as a beacon of hope for anyone who has ever been unjustly silenced. If you found yourself drawn in by Lena's relentless fight for justice, please help our channel grow. Like this video, share it with friends who believe in standing up for what's right, and subscribe for more stories that shine a spotlight on real courage and resilience. Your support allows us to continue bringing you compelling tales of triumph against adversity, stories that matter, stories that inspire change. Thank you for watching.